I married a doctor, so you probably think everything is easy with us. Big money flowing like a river, holidays at the expense of pharmaceutical companies. Nothing of the kind. I ended up on the wrong side of her career. Let me tell you a story. I met Karen while we were both attending different community colleges to save money. She was smart, even brilliant, and could talk about any topic she had ever read about. But at the same time, she was naive. Perhaps it would be better to say gullible or innocent. She didn't cope so well with practical matters. Community colleges cost a fraction of the cost of four-year universities, and that made a difference for us. My father was a contractor with a primary school education and further education in the school of life. The problem is that the blows of fate constantly fell upon him. There was a lot of work, but he received almost no money for it. Of course, I had to work for him since childhood, and I thought I saw all his shortcomings. He was a man accustomed to command. He did not listen to people and got rid of those who, in his opinion, were too smart for themselves and often smarter than himself. Unfortunately, he didn't understand that he needed smart people, and he usually took on more work than he could handle. As a result, it was rare that a project would come within budget, and he himself limited his company's growth. I had no intention of following his example. Getting an education was my ticket to a new life. It so happened that Karen and I met in summer classes a few months before we both transferred to the University of Massachusetts. I took advantage of the self-study program and took courses in mechanical engineering, civil engineering, chemistry, history, civics. Basically everything. I took extra hours because it didn't cost more, and if I got a B or better, I was happy. Through this variety of courses, I learned how to write, think logically, and get to the heart of a problem. I knew a lot in the areas that interested me, and almost nothing in those that did not. Karen took pre-med courses, took a light load, and strived for excellent grades, which is important for doctors because we don't want the doctor to know only 70 to 80% of your disease. On the other hand, I viewed college as a professional school of life. I wanted to be the contractor my father could never become. I wanted to know everything I needed and a little more. We both completed our undergraduate degrees at the same time. Karen is lucky. Despite the lack of relatives in the medical field and influential recommendations, the medical school in Philadelphia accepted her and gave her a modest scholarship. We moved to Philadelphia and got married in the summer. I freed myself from my father's iron yoke by exchanging it for Karen's velvet yoke. Her father, clearly seeing her bright future and my inevitable bankruptcy and failure, insisted on a marriage contract. He also gifted us a significant wedding sum equal to 20% of the value of the house of our choice. More precisely, by her choice. The contract stated that everything she owned and earned would remain hers. If we divorce for any reason, there will be no alimony or child support, and each of us will keep what we have earned ourselves. So the wedding gift was essentially just for her, and he thought we wouldn't be buying a house anytime soon, so the gift was put on hold for the indefinite future. No one ever accused him of being generous. I agreed, but for the sake of symmetry, I insisted that the agreement apply to both of us equally. She couldn't get alimony, child support, or my money. I also suggested that we should not be responsible for each other's debts. She was against it because she had huge student debts, but I pointed out that if I, as a contractor, went bankrupt and creditors were able to get through the corporate shield, she could also be liable for those debts. This ended the dispute. Her father was delighted that his family was protected from my unsuitable person. Well, to hell with it. We lived 300 miles away, and I only saw him occasionally. We started our married life with separate credit cards and bank accounts. Because I was more experienced in everyday affairs, I had to manage finances, earn money, pay bills, and sign checks, both mine and hers. I also set up a system to track our income so I could track where it was going. She earned very little while studying, so income sharing was rather theoretical. Philadelphia has been kind to me. I found a good job with a contractor and spent 2 years exploring the area and providing for the two of us. Of course, Karen was accumulating student debt, which was huge by my standards, which she would have to start paying off after graduation. But don't worry, be happy. Doctors make a lot of money. I decided to open my own business, despite my wife's advice. My father-in-law called me a fool. I can't blame him for that because my father said the same thing. I'm proud that things went well from the very beginning. It helped that Karen and I were similar in the amount of time we devoted to our careers. It was a colossal effort on both sides. The time spent together was priceless. Since I had a more flexible schedule, I tried to be there whenever she had a free hour. It was hard, but we were young, full of energy, and in love. She planned her pregnancy so that she would give birth a month after graduation and hit the target within 2 weeks. Beautiful little girl. Her residency was worse than medical school, at least in terms of time load. In the hospital, she was a low-paid slave, a servant of Asclepius, the god of medicine. Looking back, I'm not sure our marriage really survived her residency. You've probably read how some medical residents have affairs with each other on night shifts. I'm sure she didn't do it because she was so exhausted day after day that the only difference between making love to her and making love to a corpse in the morgue would be the temperature. It was a difficult, lonely time for me, which was brightened up by our daughter and my growing, demanding business. Unfortunately, we got used to each other not being around. Her internship and later medical practice took 55-60 hours a week. Plus, the schedule was irregular. I continued to take care of our daughter. I kept a diary where I wrote down things for both work and home life. It was real work keeping track of everything that was planned for my daughter, wife, and myself. Kindergarten, of course, was a necessity. It really bothered me that my daughter spent so much time with strangers. I moved my office to a space opposite the kindergarten, which I bought on the cheap. I hired a woman named Mildred as my office manager. She looked like a grandmother and had the same grandmother's name. Although I needed her to be on site full-time for calls and other office work, there really wasn't enough to keep her busy. It was she who offered to watch my daughter during the last 3 hours of the workday. My daughter was delighted, and so was I. The day of liberation for my wife came with the end of her internship. We spent a couple of weeks on the coast before she started working as a family doctor in a small clinic in the suburbs. She dreamed of buying a house. Banks and mortgage brokers then offered mortgages with no down payment and no credit checks. She showed them her salary and chose a new house. I had little choice since, according to her, it was her money. She wanted a new McMansion-style house, and I dreamed of a house built before the war, between 19 and 1940. We bought a new, poorly built house 45 minutes from my office. The wedding gift from her father doubled as a gift to mark the end of her internship. 2 in 1. It was $30,000 that went toward a down payment on a house. It was a significant amount of money for him, but his daughter was hopeful and chose the $700,000 house. His contribution barely covered taxes and closing costs. At 7% interest, the mortgage was $14,500 per month, and with taxes, heating, home maintenance, car, and various insurances taken into account, monthly expenses reached $6,500. Her student loan payments were another $5,000 a month. I tried to persuade her to lower her demands to a more modest house, costing $250,000-300,000. But dear, I worked so many years for this, she said. After all these years of eating only beans, you want to spend it all on a house and still eat beans? This is crazy. We are young. Now is the time to enjoy life and not be tied hand and foot by a huge house. I lost. To make matters worse, over the next 3 years, she took out loans against the house to furnish it with expensive but low-quality furniture. It pissed me off that all the beautiful traditional furniture that I had inherited from my uncle and that he had made with his own hands was relegated to being pushed into my office and the spare bedroom. Going into such debt was complete madness. I keep a very close eye on debt in my business because lack of capital can ruin a business faster than anything short of stupidity. Things were going well. No, they went very well. I was making good money, and I wanted to spend more time with my family, so I decided to move my office closer to home. Soon I got my chance. I was working on a major project, the restoration of a mansion from the Great Gatsby era. I've already billed over $350,000, and that's just for structural and exterior work. Unfortunately, the owner of the house suffered in the financial crisis and was forced to sell the property. I had a lien on my house in the form of a construction lien, and he didn't have the money to pay it off. He owed me $110,000, although about 30 of it was for materials that had not yet been used. There was a beautiful gatehouse and carriage house on the property, about 10 minutes from my house. They were on their own, on a 1-acre lot that was mostly rocky hillside, but had a beautiful view. There was an unused 25-meter right-of-way that connected this area to the main estate. Separating the two areas was fairly easy. The buildings looked much worse than they were, so I offered to buy them for what he owed me, plus $45,000 in cash. He happily agreed, and I completed the work that was in progress, and then created a shell company to purchase the property. I converted the carriage house into an office, but, as it was a site of historical significance, retained the original appearance, including the arched double doors. This also left me with the option of using it as a garage in the future. When the office became suitable for work, I began restoring the gatehouse. Over the next few months, whenever my crew had free time, I assigned them to work on the house. It was typical for my wife not to notice what I was doing in business. When I showed her the new office, she assumed I was renting it. She wasn't interested in this. She didn't ask a single question. She didn't even ask how much I was paying for it. She said the place looked old-fashioned and needed to be torn down. Build something beautiful. It's sad that such a significant event in my life turned out to be so uninteresting for her. That day, I seriously thought about whether I had done the right thing by marrying her. I began to think about ending our marriage. But all marriages have ups and downs. I continued to praise her, give her attention, and hope for the best. In terms of social life, we had a few couples that we enjoyed hanging out with, some doctors, others not. These were mostly people who were doing well, businessmen or community leaders running non-profit organizations. We, of course, were not rich, but we were probably no longer middle class. If you didn't know about its debt load, you might think we're doing great. As expected, some doctors were reluctant to communicate with me, and engineers and entrepreneurs could not always understand my wife, the doctor. Gradually, I began to notice changes in our relationship. More and more, I became the person providing home and family support. Any changes in her schedule, I had to adjust and back her up. This is what I've always done, only now even stronger. If she was late, I would drop everything and take our daughter, because doctor couldn't keep up. She agreed to do something with me or with our daughter, but at the last moment she refused. I understand that the doctor is important to many people, but we are her family, and it was obvious who was more important to her. Mildred didn't complain, but she spent more time with her daughter than I thought was appropriate. Modern life is such that you are constantly distracted by someone. I receive calls from sites and suppliers after business hours. I have 2 mobile phones, one for work, the other for personal matters. I resolve about 99% of calls after work directly over the phone in a couple of minutes. For many years, my wife was the same, except when she was on duty. But in the summer, everything changed. Her pager started going off, and she had to drop everything and go to the hospital. Well, part of being a doctor, you say. But she was a family doctor in a fairly large clinic, and they took turns on duty. However, it seemed that she was taking on more duty than she was supposed to. One Saturday in late September, we spent a hot day doing housework and maintaining the grounds. Dirty and tired, we showered before dinner. I offered to have some quick fun, but she declined, promising a nice evening later. This suited me. We sat on the terrace after dinner, drank coffee, and listened to the happy screams and laughter of children playing. This is life, I thought. At about 7:30, her pager went off. Karen looked at him with irritation, stood up and said, "I need to go to the hospital. I'll go change clothes." She looked neat, a white t-shirt with a big red cross and the inscription, "Donate blood, save a life." Fitting right. White shorts and shiny red sneakers made her look elegantly casual. You just took a shower and put on clean clothes. Why change clothes if you still have to change back into your uniform at the hospital? I asked. She looked distracted. Oh, exactly. You are right. Okay, I'll be back soon. A little later, around 8, our daughter Carrie arrived, tired and dirty from playing. You're so dirty that I think it's time to go get some ice cream and then go to the bathroom, I exclaimed. There were screams of joy. This was followed by a call to Jennifer, her best friend for the summer. We drove to the other side of town because only Smedley's ice cream, served home-style, would satisfy us. The girl was completely delighted. I was sitting on a bench in front of Smedley, licking a pistachio ice cream, lazily looking at the mothers in their minimalist summer outfits, when I suddenly saw a rare picture. Indian Chief motorcycle, 1948 model, bright yellow with white fenders and sparkling chrome. It passed by with a wonderful deep growl that modern motorcycles can only dream of imitating. I recognized it because my older brother once had a detailed model of this motorcycle, and I am still jealous of it. The driver was a fat man, slouched in the saddle, wearing jeans and a denim jacket and black leather boots. The woman hugged him from behind, pressing herself tightly against him. She was wearing an American flag helmet, a white t-shirt with a red cross and the words "Donate Blood" on it, blue jeans and shiny red sneakers. The summer evening was getting cooler. She will regret not wearing a jacket. After that, it was difficult to behave carefree. After that, it was difficult for me to remain carefree. I think the children did not notice my mood, since they compensated for it with their laughter and fun. I felt embarrassed, but I was glad that I forgot to send her student loan payment on Friday. About 2/3 of this amount came from my money. It would be a waste. From that moment on, I stopped paying for anything that belonged to her. She would have to pay for her house, car, and all other expenses on her own, which would quickly drain her bank account and the savings associated with it. I continued to pay most of her bills, but used her account exclusively for that. On Monday morning, I hired a divorce lawyer. He promised to look into the prenup, but said he knew the lawyer who drafted it and assumed it would be sound, adding that any contract could be challenged. Evidence of infidelity was not required, but it could provide leverage in matters of child custody, although the chance of this was slim. Usually, children stay with their mother. My second call was to a friend who was into antique cars. Indian Chief motorcycles are rare and valuable. Riding one is almost like being Jay Leno. My friend did not hesitate. It almost certainly belonged to Dr. Alfred Hale. I didn't know him, but I heard the name. Big shot at the hospital. Well, this is all clear. The third call was to an investigator who was recommended to me by my business insurance agent. His name was Samir Patel, or Sam for short. I saw no point in following my wife. I was pretty sure she was only sleeping with one person. But Dr. Alfred Syphilis Hale was another story, and I wanted revenge. I told Sam I wanted to gather evidence on Dr. Hale and gave him everything I knew. I expected that I would have to pay extra for urgent work, but apparently Sam had a flexible schedule. He met me halfway and promised to get down to business right away. I put down $3,000 as a deposit for the first week, asking for photos, audio, and video if possible. I also suggested that he tread carefully, since Hale had enough money to cause problems if he realized that he was being played with. The fourth call was to my foreman, with an order to start bringing in workers to complete the lodge, at least to a condition sufficient to obtain permission to move in. Otherwise, it was a normal day. I tried to make everything look normal. It took me about 2 to 3 weeks to comfortably turn out the lights in our marriage. That evening, at our usual bedtime, while we were drinking coffee, my wife said, "I'm going to a medical conference in New York on Friday and Saturday in a week. It's sponsored by Merck, and I need to go there." "Where will you stay?" I asked. "In one of the best hotels in New York, Greenpoint Plaza. I can't imagine how much it will cost." I took out my iPhone and looked for information. "You're kidding. Greenpoint is in Brooklyn, as is this hotel. It seems nothing special, but clearly not 5-star. Look at the photo, $110 a night." "Let me take a look. I guess I was wrong." This is some kind of unremarkable hotel. Not even Crown Plaza or anything like that. Oh, I need to check. But I definitely didn't mix up the date. That night, we had marital sex for the first time in a long time. I consider this my weakness after all. I was the initiator. The Wednesday before her conference was very busy. I met with an attorney to discuss draft divorce papers. He offered to hide the financial information of my business so that if the prenuptial agreement, which he believed was secure, was somehow violated, I would not lose too much. He had doubts about child support, despite the prenuptial agreement. I objected that this is my child and I want to support him. The lawyer put me in my place. You can support as much as you want, but avoid a court decision on this matter. My accountant said it would take him a few weeks to hide my cash reserves in the business. I joked that contractors usually want to pull money out of thin air, not the other way around, and told him he needed to hide 75% in a week. Later that day, I met with the private investigator for the first time. We chose Starbucks. It turned out he was working from home, and he said it was better that some people didn't know where to find him. Mr. Harlow, this is simply incredible. This is the first time in my long career that I have encountered this. And this, believe me, is rare. Your Dr. Hale rents the same motel room always on Mondays and Thursdays, and sometimes on Saturdays. The same room every time. Now comes the fun part. Listen. Last Thursday, he took the woman there, and they stayed there from noon until about 1:30. Here is her photograph. I looked at the photo. I've never seen her in my life. Redhead, quite pretty. Her name is Eileen McCormack, and she works for one of the home care companies. She had a company sticker on her car. I have her file. I couldn't take any photos inside because the curtains were tightly closed, but I have an audio recording. They came out of there in love. Here is another photo. He returned to the hospital. And here's the most amazing thing. I was shocked. At 6 p.m. he drove back to the same motel, arriving there at 6:15 m and entering the same room. At 6:25 a woman arrived and also entered his room, like the previous one. He gave me the photo. Sorry, but this is your wife. Although, I think you already knew that, right? I have a recording of this visit as well. This is the first time I have encountered the same man meeting two different women on the same day in the same room. It turns out that he does this twice a week, and sometimes more often. I have accessed the room and installed audio and video as you requested. Someone will be nearby to record what is happening inside. Here is a disc with recordings of your wife, and another woman whom we have not yet identified. She arrived with Dr. Hale. I thanked him. Sam, if problems start, is there a chance that it will somehow be traced back to you? I'm serious. Hale's money could be serious if he decides to take revenge when he realizes he's been played. No, I assure you, they'll never find me, unless you tell them, of course. But I'm careful. There are no fingerprints of mine in these photographs, nor are there any in the room. I told him to continue recording until further notice, but not to film any more outside, paid another $3,000 in cash, and left with a bitter taste in my soul that had nothing to do with the coffee. The next day, I closed the joint credit accounts, explaining to Karen that this was to better control our finances. I have also completed the final steps to transfer funds. Every week I received recordings on disc from Samir. It had 2 cameras and probably 2 microphones. Of course, I watched all the recordings, but I studied the recordings with my wife's participation especially carefully. I obsessively listened to every word, carefully watched every movement. I think it was cathartic for me. The more I looked, the further away my feelings for her became. Physically, let's say Hale looked good for his age. Much older than me, 15 or 20 years. Obviously never played sports. About the same amount of body hair, and I was pleased to see that his waist was 4 or 5 inches wider than mine. She did whatever he asked without hesitation, willingly trying anything he wanted. How I wanted her to be like this with me. Looking back, I realized that perhaps I, too, was partly to blame for our unsuccessful sex. When Karen said no, I didn't insist. I let her be the goalkeeper in the bedroom, and Hale put pressure on her, and she gave in with pleasure. It's simple, right? We all want to please our partner. Perhaps it was all about my expectations, and as I saw, they were too low. Work on the gatehouse was in full swing, and there was a week left before its completion. I called the lawyer, but he was on vacation. His assistant assured me that I would receive the documents, as promised, by next Wednesday. I was ready to file for divorce and leave her home and her life. Our daughter was at a neighbor's house, and we were sitting on the terrace drinking good wine the evening before her medical conference. Perhaps I shouldn't have, but I still made one last attempt to save our marriage. "Do you think my wife will ever return?" I asked. "What? What are you talking about?" She looked surprised. "I'm talking about you. You're getting further and further away from me and Carrie. It's like you're leaving our family. I just wanted to know if you found someone to take our place and if you would even come back." There was a long silence. I was about to get up and leave when she quietly answered. "He is a doctor at the hospital. I can't say his name, but I think we're in love. I think this is something real. But you won't understand right away, right? Emotions are so strange. I'll understand in a month or two. And no, I cannot and do not want to give it up. Sorry, but this is the situation. I still love you, but—" She fell silent. I didn't say a word. "Chris, won't you say anything?" she asked. "You're not finished yet. You said you loved me, but— and I want to know for how long, how often, and most importantly, why. What does he have that I don't?" I continued calmly. "Okay, it's all complicated, but I love you. Or what I always considered love. It's different with him. We were intimate for about a month, maybe 6 weeks. There is no why here. It just happened. He's no better or worse than you, just different. So every time your pager goes off, you either go to save lives or go to the doctor. Okay, give me your hand for a minute." She extended her left hand to me, and I took it. "Chris, don't be like that. It's not like you say. I just need to be sure it's just a few weeks. Please," she said pleadingly. I held her hand with both mine and easily removed the wedding and engagement rings from her finger. She didn't even seem to realize it until I took off my wedding ring and put it in her hand. "Hey, give them back. I can't walk without them. They are mine," she exclaimed. "Listen, you are a woman of easy virtue who is cheating on her husband. If I let you sleep with him but leave the rings on your hand, that means I'm okay with it." "To hell with you," I answered coldly. "Chris, people will notice. Bring them back." She was almost screaming. "It's not my problem," I said. I took a couple of coins out of my pocket, stood up, and threw them far into the yard. In the gathering dusk, she saw something shiny flying through the air and thought it was rings worth $9,000. "Then go find them. If you wanted to save the marriage they envisioned, this wouldn't be a problem. And by the way, you'd probably be surprised how many people already know what you've been doing. You and he became a local celebrity. So tell everyone how lucky you are to have the big doctor. Tell them that he loves you more than life itself, that he is about to leave his wife for you. He's just waiting for the moment to tell her about it. Well, good luck." "Chris, stop this rudeness. How did you find out about this?" she asked. I laughed. "Under all this education of yours, it turns out that you are stupid. Every married man tells his mistress that he loves her and is going to leave his wife. This keeps her hooked. Women who consider themselves decent pretend that they need such a long-term mandatory contract. Honest women do it just for fun. They enjoy the process. Sometimes a man actually divorces his wife. I think this is about 1 in 5 cases because the marriage was doomed anyway. And sometimes he even marries his mistress. Maybe this is also in 1 case out of 5. So the chances are 24 out of 25 times a man will leave his mistress. But who knows? Maybe you really have true love, you get married, and both of you, having cheerfully destroyed your marriages, will become faithful in your new marriage, and in your free time you will dissect corpses together in the basement," I said bitterly. She went into our bedroom, slamming the door loudly. I wonder what she expected when she told me everything so openly. I collected the documents that I was going to leave with her. They spelled out how much it cost to maintain the house, Her net income, minus student loan payments, mortgage payments, taxes, car payments, utilities, car and home insurance. All this turned out to be negative. She was 1,000 a week in debt, with no food, gas, or anything else. Ha ha ha. I planned the bill payments so that on day X all her bills would be paid, leaving her with virtually no money in her accounts. The next morning, she again assured me that it was indeed a medical conference and walked out the door. I canceled all of our joint credit cards. She had one for work, so she wasn't completely without a source of funds. I made copies of the bills and our tax returns. She'll need them. I made a list with the names and phone numbers of the heater guy, the lawn care guy, the snow removal guy, and the general handyman. As I reviewed my tax returns, I was pleased that for the past 3 years, despite my efforts to hide my income, I had made more than her. Fine. Well, maybe now it would be unnecessary information for her. She left, and at this stage, I wanted her not to come back. Why give her a reason to stay? I pulled the tax returns out of the pile. She will get them in time. The movers arrived at 11 a.m. on Friday. My workshop took up one truck and most of the movers' time. I took all of my uncle's furniture, plus a few family items, my dresser, and the contents of my closet. I was such a good guy. I hired a cleaning service to sweep, vacuum, and remove all traces of my presence. I put her financial documents in a box, threw the checking bills on top, and in the second box, I put all the little things we found while emptying out drawers and cleaning the floors. I placed them on a chair in the kitchen and left the signed divorce papers on the kitchen table. I also left a note on the refrigerator and closed the door to this chapter of my life at 4 p.m. on Friday. On Saturday, my daughter and I went shopping for furniture for the nursery, and we set up her room at my house. The updated house looked amazing, insulated, with new double-glazed windows that looked like the old ones. Original plaster with restored paint and ornaments. The original kitchen has been restored and slightly modernized for modern needs, and everything is freshly sanded and varnished or painted. The crews did an excellent job. I'd like to think they did this out of respect for me. Or it was because it's hard to find a job these days, and I had a big payroll. On Sunday evening, Karen called at 10 p.m. hysterical. I listened long enough to realize that she had realized her bankruptcy. I told her, "Listen, don't cry into my vest. It's not my problem. I don't care. Go with your problems to the doctor. Let him be gentle, caring, and give you money." More screams of rage, remorse, and pain. "Listen, you can't talk right now. I'll come by tomorrow night at 7 o'clock and we'll talk it over. Carrie's fine. She's with me now. I think we'll share custody. We can find a way to solve your duty problem. Sex calls. Don't call until 7 p.m. tomorrow." I hung up. The phone rang again. It was her. "Listen, don't call Carrie either. She's already been in bed for over an hour, and in your hysterical state, you'll only scare her. Be prepared to tell me exactly when and on what day you want her to stay with you. I need to know this when we see you tomorrow. Good night." It seems she expected me to stall until she found another man she liked better. It didn't seem to even occur to her that I could make a quick decision. Yeah, you don't value water until the well dries up. I wonder what she thought I would do. Say, "Chris, thanks for making a delicious dinner. Help the kid, what's her name, with his homework after you wash the dishes. I know you have to get up at 6 a.m. for work, so don't wait for me. Doctor, I just called, and he urgently needs dirty sex play. I can't keep him waiting." Having said this, any husband will probably want to stay. Of course, I arrived at 7 in the evening. To annoy her, I bought an Italian sandwich from a very good Italian delicatessen with a crispy crust. The bread was placed separately so as not to get soggy. I arrived in dirty and sweaty work clothes and boots. Knocked on the door. Dirty clothes were part of the theater. I worked up a sweat doing landscaping work in my new home. She looked good. Low-cut blouse, lace bra, short skirt, barefoot. Seeing the package in my hand, she said, "Oh, how sweet. You brought something for me. I think we're both sorry. Come in, I've prepared dinner." "You misunderstood. I'm not sorry. I'm glad I realized who you are before I wasted even more years. No dinner was discussed. I brought this for myself. You do what you want. But I prepared a nice dinner for you. I looked at the table and thought, you didn't cook anything. You bought it ready-made at the store. You must have just returned from the doctor because you've never dressed up like that for me. But he said something else. Okay, let's eat and talk about Carrie. That's what we have in common now. I'm guessing you're okay with joint custody, and I was wondering if you've thought about when exactly you'd want to see her. I don't want a divorce. It's not my choice. It's just that maybe it's really something serious with Fred, and I need time to understand. You know, if it's real. Of course, you've already said this before. However, the real reality that has now fallen upon you is a divorce. I envy your deluded state. New love is truly something amazing, although I must say that it clearly has not affected your ability for smart thinking. And don't get me wrong, he's obviously really something special. What's so attractive about him? Chris, I'm not going to compare him to you or vice versa. There's no way I'm going to discuss this. No, really, I'm not asking for a comparison. I just want to understand what's so attractive about him. Honestly, I swear, I'm not going to lose my temper. Tell me. Well, it's not really about sex. He's good at it. It's good, but not outstanding, at least in my limited experience. It's a normal size, as far as I know. But it smells incredible. It's not perfume or something like that. This is his body. It has such a subtle aroma. He has a commanding personality. He is confident. He is in control. He is so attentive, kind. He listens carefully and gives reasonable comments to everything I say. With him, well, feel protected. I want to please him. I probably would have done. Well, I really did everything I thought he wanted, and he seemed to know what I wanted. Wow, then he really is a talented Don Juan. Well, for God's sake, good luck in your search. His bedside manner carries over to your bed. I'm glad I got out of your way. And it's good for you too. You know, not anymore you have to lie and hide. Now you can be open about your love. Chris, I really didn't want a divorce. It was your idea. Dear God, is it my fault? She's going crazy. Whatever, divorce is a fact. Ready or not, it's coming. And lest we forget, taking care of our daughter is the reason we're talking today. You know I have no control over my schedule. Why are you asking this? Carrie needs to have some stability in her life. She won't go to bed in your house and wake up in mine. She needs to know who's taking her to soccer practice on Tuesday. She needs to know where she'll be on Saturday, though. To plan who she can play with. So if you want to spend time with her, when will it be? And what will you do with Carrie when one of the calls pulls you out of the house? What will you do if you are late? I'm not in a position to answer this right now. I mean, this is still new to me. Do we have to decide this right now? As long as you're happy that she's not with you, no. We may never mention it again. So what we do in the next few days or weeks isn't forever. Things change. So for now, I assume that you agree, albeit reluctantly, that she will stay with me, and you will visit her when you can. You cannot drop in without warning, call in advance. I need 24 hours to change plans. I just want you to know that I am waiting and demanding that you be her mother. Let's try to be polite to each other, and if we can't, at least in front of Carrie. I don't say bad things about you in front of her, and neither do you, okay? That makes sense. Otherwise, I'm between a rock and a hard place. I'll have to come to terms with that. Although in my other life, everything is going well. Great, I'm happy for you. I hope the doctor makes you happy. I'm sorry I couldn't. But to be honest, I realized that it was mutual. It would have been better if we separated without cheating, but shit happens. Poe, at least now we both have the prospect of good sex and company. Well, I'm off. Chris, I didn't file for divorce. You did. Here you are again. You really didn't expect this? You cuckolded me, planted a bomb, lit the fuse, and are wondering why a divorce fell on you and destroyed our family. She successfully held back her tears. I blew her a kiss and walked out the door, leaving the sandwich wrapper smelling of oregano and garlic on the table. Well, that's all right. We all deserve happiness, she just as much as I do. A week later, I got unexpectedly lucky. About 6 months ago, I submitted an adventurous bid to build a new high school. The job was much bigger, no, much bigger than any I had ever done, and to be honest, I thought my application would be rejected for that very reason. My price was high, mainly because I didn't trust my calculations too much. I have added 15% to the actual estimate to cover possible errors. As a result, he took an honorable third place. My actual estimate without this 15% was exactly between the bids of the two leading contractors. Within weeks, a bank in New York, Lehman Brothers, went bankrupt and lending stopped. The first-place contractor was a large and reputable company. A couple of weeks ago, I read that he was accused of bribing city officials. The city rejected his proposal. On Tuesday, I was invited to the school office for a consultation to see if I could stay on my application. The second-place contractor has filed for bankruptcy. Bam! Was there yesterday, gone today. Meanwhile, construction costs have dropped by about 10%, and I foresee another 10% decline in the coming months as current projects are completed without new ones coming in due to the recession. Usually, in such a situation, all proposals are rejected and a new competition is announced. But that would mean months of delays, and it's possible the money would be reallocated to other projects or not available at all. Additionally, the city and school board wanted to show that work would begin in the city as early as November. My problem was financing as I hid my money for the divorce. I asked for a week to crunch the numbers and discuss with my bank. We spent 2 days checking prices with the appraisers. A 20% reduction in costs has already occurred. I went to the local bank I worked with. They didn't agree until I explained to them the price drop. My bid was for $67 million. I originally calculated the cost at $61 million. My new expenses amounted to about $50 million. The bank verified my calculations and I received financing. I was ready to start. Now I was in big business and could earn over $15 million from this project. Detective Sam called me to Starbucks for a meeting. He had audio and video evidence. Imagine 12 women. My wife and another woman were regulars once or twice a week, and the others showed up occasionally. We had to admit that Hale was absolutely incredible. I told Sam to continue. At worst, we had great movies. On Friday evening, I received a panicked call from Karen. It turned out that she could not pay her bills. She didn't understand them, so I went with Carrie to see her. Karen and I sat in the kitchen while Carrie played with the neighbor kids. "Chris, all these bills. I have no chance of paying them." "No crap, Sherlock. It's called bankruptcy. You don't make enough. Not counting the work I did around the house, and now you have to hire people. You're about $100,000 a year short. Your best bet would be to talk to a lawyer and file for bankruptcy." "Don't exaggerate. I'm a doctor. I can't be bankrupt." "Then pay your bills. Maybe the doctor will pay you for the services rendered. Surely he gets better service from you than he ever did from me." "Sorry. Actually, I managed to control my emotions. That's exactly what I shouldn't have told you. Besides, if he stayed with you this long, you must be doing something right, both in and out of bed." "About money. I can't change jobs or find a second one. You know, I'm a doctor. Someone will definitely hire me." "To hell with you. I need at least another $3,000 a month in income, and I won't have a second job. In reality, you'll need closer to $14,500 just to mow the lawn, without taking into account any incidental expenses. And this is despite the fact that you will have virtually no money for personal expenses. You forgot about taxes, so ask your partners to increase your salary. Listen, I need you to give me money. Did you read the prenuptial agreement you and your father made me sign? I don't owe you anything. Stop paying the mortgage, that'll be a start. Listen up here, if I lose my house, I'll ruin you in divorce. You won't get a dime, you bastard. Karen, this pointless argument about money will get you nowhere. You really have no choice but to get a lawyer, file for bankruptcy, and get rid of the house. It's currently worth about $450,000 and has a $600,000 mortgage on it and more. Almost $100,000 in secondary mortgage if the bank reduces the mortgage amount by $300,000, or if it repossesses the house, that $300,000 will be forgiven debts and will be taxable to you. That's my best offer, but you need to talk to a lawyer. I won't give you money. I regularly pay all the bills that I am required to pay, but nothing more. When our marriage had a future, I provided for you the way you, not I, wanted. You left me. I donate money to charity, but you don't. Oh, when you complain about how cruel the bankruptcy laws are, remember that the money you and your father gave to your congressman has come back to hurt you. They have no mercy for those who are hopelessly in debt or poor. And one more piece of advice: never declare war. Why warn the enemy? Reconsider your intention to go against me. Thanks to your father, you won't be able to reach me. Don't go there. I think we'll end here. I'll go get Carrie. She was furious. Carrie probably risked getting burned when she kissed Mom goodbye, and she and I went home. She called me a couple of weeks later. She wanted to talk. She asked if I could leave Carrie at home and come over for dinner. I said that I would come at 7 p.m., but after dinner, since I did not want to sit at her table at all. It was easy to refuse, and I realized that I only had weak feelings for her. But the anger for what she did remained and will probably be with me for many years, but I learned to keep it under control. Chris, thanks for coming. As you know, my financial affairs are very bad. The house is leaving, but I don't know when. I haven't paid it since you left. As soon as the bank appears, I will live in a one-room apartment. I broke up with him. Oh, with that same odorous doctor? Apparently, you realize that for Dr. Hale, you are just sex. And that's putting it mildly. If you know his name, God, everyone probably did. He was dating another woman. I loved him and was sure that he loved me too. Well, I was very wrong. At least you fell on your face. What do you want from me? I want my family back. We've already discussed this before. You said you thought he was your true love, which also meant I wasn't your true love. When you decided to cuckold me, you proved that you didn't really know me. And in fact, I realized that I didn't know you either. I've thought about this a lot. Believe me, I realized that I hated you more than I loved you. You and I are the past, not the future. And the fact that Hale won't be your future doesn't change anything between us either. So forget about it. Chris, one more thing. I want to get back at him. I really want this. He deceived me with lies, and I want him to pay. Forget about revenge. Don't do anything. You'll look like an idiot no matter how things turn out. Doctors should be wise, insightful, balanced professionals, and not fools in love who run after the first person who comes across a beautiful speech. And don't expect me to stalk him in the operating room and break his fingers. Karen, remember the Bible. Vengeance is mine, and I will repay, says the Lord. By the way, I left some books here. Do you mind if I take them? Yes, please. They are where you left them. I haven't read anything for months. Here's another problem in my life. Everything I do is work. I love to read, and I haven't had time for it for a long time. I grabbed a bag from the kitchen and collected some novels, but what I really needed was the hospital's anniversary album. I needed to do some research, and I remembered there were group photos with names. I had another idea on how to annoy Hale, but there was no point in telling Karen part of the blow would fall on her. Returning home, I began looking through the hospital album and was able to identify 9 women, 2 doctors, 5 nurses, and 2 administrative staff. 3 unknowns remained. I called Sam Patel and then the lawyer who was handling my business. I realized that I didn't like being a big contractor and dealing with bosses. I really enjoyed being close to the work, especially the historic restoration projects. I asked a lawyer to find a contractor who was willing to buy a company with a very good 3-year contract that was virtually guaranteed to make a profit. I offered the lawyer 10% of the transaction amount. As for Sam, it cost me another $3,000, but he was able to find out everything about those three unknowns. We met at a local coffee shop, not Starbucks. New office, Sam. The coffee is better here. Belongs to the client. One of my friends knows one of the office employees well, and we immediately recognized the names of two of them. It turned out that they were his patients. Plus, two of those whose names we already knew were also his patients. We concocted a fake newspaper article about the third woman and edited her photo to include clothes. My contact brought this article to the office, and we got her name. It turned out she was both a patient and a nurse in his downtown office. I also found out their addresses and family details. I bought an inexpensive laptop on Craigslist with cash, and one of my guys got me a stolen credit card in case I needed it. One of the local hotels had an unsecured Wi-Fi network, so I parked on the sidewalk across the street and went online. I didn't have to pay anything, but more importantly, I didn't have to leave any data. I signed up for one of the blogging sites and created an account under Hale's name. Then I uploaded part 1 of Hale's Pussy Patrol, favorite nurses to relieve my stress. Each woman had a nude portrait with a name associated with a 30-second video clip of her having sex with him. Both the woman and Hale were clearly visible in the video. Then I started an email. I used a program that allowed me to send individual letters to a whole group of people so that everyone received the letter personally and did not know that it was sent to others. So it seemed as if Hale himself had sent Hale's Puppy Patrol to each of them personally. No one can resist spreading this juicy news further. I used several address databases to cover both private and business addresses. Clicked send. The first attack on Hale is a direct hit. Karen called half an hour later. "Oh my God, Chris, do you know what that idiot Hale did? He sent me a letter where he has sex with nurses. He calls them Hale's Pussy Patrol. These nurses, I know all three of them very well. Jesus, Karen, what kind of guy can have an orgy with 5 women? What could you possibly do with that much? This is a huge waste of women's resources. This is fake. No, 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 one after another, but all in one room. At different times. My God, he's crazy. He filmed it all. How could he? That's the stamina to go through 5 women in a day. No wonder you liked him. Praise be to him. He probably installed cameras somewhere and recorded everything on video. Perhaps he even broadcast it all to the receiver in the car. Of course, he could transmit this to anyone within a few hundred meters. Anyone could have recorded it. Do you recognize the room? Oh my God, oh my God. This was the motel where he and I met. Oh my God. Right, he probably filmed you too. Maybe he has Hale's Puppy Patrol. Doctor's version? Your 15 minutes of fame may be about to begin. That bastard, someone will kill him. He better not do this. Oh Jesus, what have I done? Send me the link. I'd love to see this. Besides, I need to meet some available women. Okay, I have to go. You're a pig, Chris, a real pig. The next day, the blog was deleted. Internet censorship. I created another blog, and the next day sent out new links to Dr. Hale making love to fools. Everything followed the same pattern. Letters were sent to everyone separately. The rumors were already swirling. There was no stopping them. Like clockwork, half an hour after I sent the letters, Karen called again, sobbing. This bastard posted my photo and video. God, the phone rings every 5 minutes. I'll kill this bastard. Okay, give me the link, and listen, don't say that. Someone will probably actually finish him off, saving you the effort. People will remember your words. Remember, you broke up with him long before his current problems. I just emailed you the link. Oh my, what a loser. I clicked on the link. If she had intentionally sent me the wrong link, and if I had given away that I knew what was there before I looked, my game would have been exposed. She wasn't that cunning, but I was still careful. Exactly, here she is. Well, you look really good. You and I have never done this. Thank you. Our hospital and 2 others have temporarily revoked his privileges, so he's out of work for now until they decide what to do with him. For now, nurses are seen as victims. Now they can add doctors to the mix. This is exactly what I need. Well, at least the stereotype about women plays into your hands this time. Poor, deluded young doctor who abandoned her family and reputation For a scoundrel, how many years of training? What a horror! Damn you and your horse you came on. What should I do now? No pun intended, just get through it. Stay out of the limelight. Don't give interviews or make public statements. Most of your patients won't know anything. Few will see these photos. Your breasts are nice, but half the people in the world have a pair of breasts, and those who don't usually have access to someone else's. Few people outside the hospital will see them, and almost no one will notice or remember your face. More importantly, you need to think about what to tell your daughter if she finds out about this. At these words, she burst into tears. I don't know how you'll cope with this. Hale is another story. These things will ruin his life before they subside, so you can enjoy the revenge you wanted without risking yourself. When I posted Hale having sex with his patients, it was public proof that he had slept with some of his patients, and it was all over for him. He lost his license to practice medicine, faced a barrage of lawsuits, and his wife filed for divorce. He fled town and is rumored to now be working for an insurance company in Texas, perhaps deciding how to deny benefits to the sick and dying. I struggled for a long time with being able to afford to spend some of the money I was making. A friend of mine who was into antique cars assured me it was a good investment, and using him as a front man, I bought an Indian Chief motorcycle, as well as another one that Hale had acquired for parts. I always thought they were potentially deadly and had never ridden one, but thought it would be fun. I was smart enough to take a driving course. Now I no longer needed my brother's toy motorcycle because I had a real one. I called the Red Cross and asked if they still had Donate Blood t-shirts. They didn't have those. I explained that I needed one, size S, new or used, and offered a check for $100 to the Red Cross and $20 cash to whoever found it. The woman I spoke to said it could be arranged, and we agreed to meet on Friday evening to make the deal. She seemed nice, and I told her what I was going to do with the t-shirt. We had a good laugh and exchanged email addresses. I took Carrie, and among other things she needed, I bought her a pair of red sneakers and gave her that very t-shirt. A couple of days later, we rode my motorcycle to Karen's house the night before it was repossessed by the bank. Carrie ran inside wearing a t-shirt and red sneakers and screamed, "Mom, look at Dad's motorcycle. We came here on it. Have you ever ridden such a cool motorcycle?" Her eyes opened wide, and she just whispered, "Oh, I rode once. Looked almost exactly like you, to be honest. It was a fun trip until it ended in an accident. Chris, you better be careful around him." Karen sued me. Unfortunately for her, the prenuptial agreement was valid, and she received nothing from me, lost her house, and declared bankruptcy. However, not all debts are discharged in bankruptcy, so I estimate that she will have to live very frugally for many years before she can get out of this hole. I, the kind person that I am, sent her father a check for $1,000 thanking her for the prenup idea and how it saved me a fortune. He returned the check without comment. Then I sent this money to a group advocating liberal values in his name and used his name as a donor. As part of the bankruptcy, Karen had to provide prior year's tax returns, and for the first time, she actually looked at those documents and saw what my income was the year of our divorce. She was shocked to learn that I was making much more than her, not to mention the huge chunk of money I got from selling my business. She demanded to know why I didn't tell her about it. I pointed out to her that I showed her all this. I showed her her signature on every tax return. The amount of income was right in front of her. She was simply so convinced that she was the doctor and I was just a glorified handyman that she believed that our income mainly came from her practice. How often we look but don't see. Actually, it's for the best. You and your father were really worried that I married you for your money. I think you liked knowing that you were bringing in a lot of income. It gave you power. But look on the bright side. You are young, beautiful, and as I and many in the world have now seen, you are much better in bed than you were with me. I'm sure you'll have a good selection of potential partners. A year later, I got rid of the motorcycle. It was fun, but I didn't ride it enough to become an experienced driver, and I didn't really enjoy it that much anyway. My friend was right. It was a good investment. I sold the bike for parts for the same price. I paid for both bikes and sold the good one for double the amount. Life goes on. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.